Nigeria could have been one of the richest countries in the world by 2025. In today's episode of The Diary of a Broken Man, we look at Nigerian economic foundation, oil and agriculture. We see how we went from a production country to a dependent country. Historically, we are one of the biggest producers of palm oil, cocoa, rubber, Then all of a sudden, from 1970s, when the oil boom came, we went down hills, depending on oil, abandoning the non-oil, sectors of the economy. And today, we are where we are. So today, we look at the historical shift from agricultural dominance to oil dominance in the Nigeria of the 1970s down to the states. Remember to subscribe, share, comment. So, pre-oil era. From the 1956, when we discovered oil, it was not that serious until the oil boom of the 1970s. Prior to this pre-oil era, Nigeria was agrarian. Then with agriculture contributing to 60% of our GDP, then 90% of export earnings, key exports included palm oil, cocoa, rubber, and the groundnut. This was the agricultural era. When Nigeria we had the groundnut pyramid in the north, we had rubber, we had everything was in quantum, and we were producing. People were into research in agricultural aspect, learning so many new things about agriculture. And all of a sudden, the oil boom came. So commercial oil discovery in the Niger Delta, started in 1956, and then in 1970s, oil boom shifted the focus from agriculture. Oil revenues surged, especially after Nigeria joined OPEC in 1971, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries in 1971, making oil the dominant export, over 90% export earning by 1980. Now, what were the problems that we encountered then? One was policy neglect. Government investment shifted oil to oil infrastructure, neglecting agriculture, rural development, and the research. Remember I said during the agricultural reign, when Nigeria was producing, people were into research in the different universities of Nigeria, University of Nigeria and Soka, UNILAG. People were doing serious research about agriculture, and who knows if those efforts continue to date. So the GDP, agricultural GDP share fell to 25% as against 60%. You see how far we fell, from 60% to 25%, while oil accounted for 20% only of our GDP, but 80% of fiscal revenue. Now, the Dutch disease and oil impacts on other sectors. First is currency devaluation. Oil exports cost Nigeria overvaluation, making non-oil exports like cocoa, rubber, groundnut uncompetitive. It made them redundant. Then we started overvaluating the naira. Then it went downhill. Then resource misallocation. Labor and capital moved to oil, weakening agriculture and the manufacturing. Food import rose. This is the era we began importing food and importing this and importing even rice and toothpick. This is when it began. Prior to this time, we were producing everything ourselves. The food we ate came from Nigeria. We created dependency. Then volatility and corruption came in because people started seeing that there is money in this oil. The oil boom came and Nigeria sold and became one of the biggest oil producers in the whole world. And I remember 1977 when Nigeria invited the whole world to come to the Festival of Art and Culture in Lagos then, and the present place called Festac, where they invited the whole world to come and join us in, eating the Nigerian money because we have become so rich, irrespective of the fact that they have abandoned the necessary infrastructural development, agriculture, and education, and every other sector necessary for the future development of Nigeria, the continuous development of Nigeria. So oil price crash in the 1980s, exposed economic fragility. Oil revenues failed. Corruption fueled corruption with little reinvested in diversification. So everything was focused on oil. Abandoning agriculture, abandoning the steel industries, abandoning every of these things that came with the Second Republic. Every of them was abandoned. Agriculture was abandoned. Industrialization was abandoned. Every focus now was on oil, abandoning the non-oil sector of the economy. And what happened? Diversification and the failure, then continuous corruption. Now, what are the current efforts to revive agriculture? Nigeria started in 2015. I think it was Goodluck Jonathan or Buhari, the then government presidents, who either of them started the Anchor Borrowers program, the ABP, where the central bank provided low interest loans and inputs to smallholder farmers. Over 4.8 million farmers benefited. Whether it is true or it's just book records, I don't know. But somehow they boosted rice, maize, cotton production. But that was then. Then agricultural policy promotion policy that started from 2016, lasted till 2020, aimed at private sector led growth, mechanization, and reducing food import. Obviously, this was not the whole Nigeria. I think some few people enjoyed this. I remembered my teachers then complaining about this particular APP. They complained so much about it because it was focused on a particular side of the country. Nigeria's rice production grows from 60% then, and then smuggling and quality issues persisted. The people were smuggling rice into Nigeria, foreign rice, and even though the then President Buhari, wanted us to go into production of rice, and he did somehow supported the development of growth of rice in Nigeria, but people still continue smuggling. And among those who smuggled rice, how some of those things enter through some of the porous border areas of Nigeria. But that's not the topic of today. So, what are the challenges? First challenge we had about agriculture and the continuous agricultural development in Nigeria is insecurity. With the offspring of Boko Haram banditry that came from late 2005-6, then 2009 when it boomed, Boko Haram, where kidnapping became the order of the day. They kidnap people in their farms, and so this was the era when everything went downhill. So the first problem, Boko Haram insurgency and the farmer header clashes, created disruption in the development of agriculture. Then infrastructural gap. We did subsistence farming. People couldn't get machineries for farming, like we see in the West and in Asia, where people use machine farming. Poor storage, transportation. If you produce tomato, before you transport them to some of the tomatoes are spoiled, and the storage was not there. There was no electricity to store some of those things. For those who are into diaries, how will you store them when you don't have electricity, or you'll be running generator? And then the irrigation problem also. Some areas lacked water. And then every of these things, limited productivity. Then climate change, erratic rainfall and desertification, threatened so many crops in Nigeria. And because we don't have the modern equipment to, and modern farming techniques, We couldn't control so many of these things. Then oil sector realities. This is what we'll talk about now. Environmental degradation. Remember the Niger Delta where oil was discovered in 1956. From that 1956, I was not sure if any effort was made to, control the effect of, the oil spillage in that area. So oil spillage in the Niger Delta have destroyed farmlands, killed fishes, then exacerbated rural poverty. That's why sometimes I wonder, is this the area that Nigeria gets this oil that they boast about, being one of the biggest oil producers in the world? And you can't even develop the Niger Delta area where you get the oil from. It's appalling. Now we created dependency, because oil still accounts for 80% of export earnings. In the 1970s, 80% of our exports. No longer cocoa, no longer rice, no longer, as we did before, rubber, cotton. No longer the natural minerals we invested in, then coal from Enugu, limestone and some other things we produced then. We abandoned those non-oil earnings, then focused only on oil, then contributing only 9% to the GDP. You see, upon the fact that 80% of our earnings came from oil, it still contributed only 9% to our GDP as a country. So outlook, while initiatives like the ABP shows progress, structural reforms addressing insecurity, improving infrastructure, and curbing corruption are critical. Diversification remains urgent to mitigate oil volatility and achieve sustainable growth in Nigeria. Nigeria can still be great. We are great already, but we just need the right leaders. That is the problem we have. Chinua Achebe in his book, The Trouble with Nigeria, wrote something. In fact, his thesis statement states that the problem of Nigeria is clearly the problem of leadership. We have not had the right leaders. That is why people are more interested in buying cars, buying foreign-made cars, buying foreign-made this, foreign-made that, instead of coming back to Africa to patronize what we have and then to produce our own. We're not even interested in producing our own, and it is very painful. It is very painful. Let me know what you think in the comment section about Nigeria's problem, moving from agriculture, production, to dependency on oil. Tell me what you think and how you think we can get back to our feet, joining other nations. Remember to subscribe, share, comment, and like for us to give you better premium content next time. See you on the next one. Cheers.